Hello, my name is Silde Baronen, or my YouTube channel is named that, and I have a topic I want to talk about, and this topic is not so very commonly talked about in the world wide web. Um, they're not. It's very rare that happens. So I would say that I think I should inform you of this issue, and this issue I'm going to talk about is the Norwegian language situation in Norway. Not just currently, but historically and all things around it. Alright, and I'm gonna just talk about the main Norwegian languages, written languages, what I call writing languages, bokmål and nynorsk, or I like to call it bokmål as I called riksmål, and nynorsk as landsmål, because or nynorsk as høgnorsk, because it's better names of it. And I also want to talk about because before I go into the topic of the first section of this video, I'm going to talk what Norway language structure is made about. The first thing is we have municipalities and counties in Norway. We don't have states like in the US, and we don't have any what we call parishes, or whatever fuck you call it in England, I don't care. But in Norway are counties and municipalities, and I want to say there are three types of ways of using nynorsk, and all Norway is not like, you don't use both nynorsk and bokmål in the same way in this country. It's three different ways to use bokmål and nynorsk in the municipalities and counties, but I'm going to just take the municipalities in this video. And the first thing is the nynorsk municipality, and this is that you, when you go to nynorsk school, you mostly learning nynorsk, and later and you have a little bit, you have nynorsk as the main language, and you have bokmål as the side language, I would say. The side language is bokmål in this case, and bokmål languages, and then you have bokmål. Bokmål is that's the opposite of the nynorsk. They have the bokmål schools have mostly bokmål and a little bit nynorsk to the side, so you have mostly bokmål and a little nynorsk to the side, but both, and you have the neutral ones is both. You have neutral municipalities. You have both nynorsk schools and bokmål schools. That is the same structure as the bokmål schools in the bokmål municipalities, and the same kind of thing in the nynorsk municipalities. And it's and they have both. But when every municipality, every student or pupil, I would like to say, we say in Norway, go to college, they can choose between bokmål and nynorsk as their main language, and choose what the side language is, and that's up the pupil to decide. And also I want to just talk about and now you understand that, and I would go to the next section is I think it's very important, because in many YouTube channels they always talking about they're always talking about so much they're always talking so much about what type of Norwegian language should you learn in Norway. But the problem with that is that you learn both nynorsk and bokmål everywhere in Norway. It's almost wherever you go in Norway. It's both bokmål and nynorsk, but one or the other language is more dominant. So if you go to a job, you can't. Most often you can't ignore nynorsk, or you can't ignore bokmål. But most the YouTube videos says you should learn bokmål, because that's the most Norwegian speaks, most Norwegians write bokmål, because it's a written writing language, not a spoken form. We don't have a spoken form of language in Norway. We don't have a speaking language. And also the thing is with the thing with and so I think the best thing is you learn both, but because that's the burden to go to Norway. You have to, you most likely to have to learn both language one time or another. You can't escape it, because you have to learn it before or after. You can't hide away from it, you know. But if but I think you should stop thinking like most people know write bokmål. You have to also think, where I'm gonna live in Norway, because in the most western part of Norway, where the beautiful nature is all the nynorsk counties and municipalities. So there you have to learn nynorsk. So there's very non-informative videos on YouTube that says you have to learn bokmål because the most people. Yeah, but it's not like the case is like in every part of Norway. No, some parts is dominant bokmål, and there's almost every part of Norway, but some are not. And that's the nynorsk part of it, and it's very important to have both. But if you're gonna learn, I think you also should. If you're gonna just learn bokmål, you can also just learn nynorsk, because in nynorsk municipalities, it's very a good because when you think about it, you don't think about forests or like flat mountains. No, because that's the rest of Norway, you know. And when you think of Norway, you think of dramatic mountains and glaciers and all of that. And almost the most part and the most beautiful nature treasures in Norway is in Western Norway. And if you're gonna live with beautiful nature, you have to learn nynorsk, because I think you should like find out, is this a nynorsk municipality or is it neutral, or is this a bookmark? So you have to find. But I would give you I would give you that advice that you should learn both, but because you can't hide away from one another, you have to learn actually both to be Norwegian citizen or Norwegian, a person who lives in Norway, you know. So that's important, you know. You can't just hide away from it, because that's how it is. And also, nynorsk. I will also talk about that nynorsk is the oldest language of the two writing languages, even if it's the smallest one. And the thing is, that's maybe the weirdest thing and the most confusing thing, because nynorsk means new Norwegian in Norwegian, and bokmål means book language in Norwegian. And that's very confusing, because nynorsk isn't nynorsk is not a very broadly, and we don't have so much nynorsk in middle schools in Norway, you know. So that's a real problem, because you can't learn so much nynorsk so much outside Norway than in Norway. And the nynorsk was created by Ivar Aasen from a little village in Norway called Ørsta. Not that little, actually a very large village in Norway called Ørsta. In western Norway, of course, where the most beautiful nature in Norway is. It's a region called Sunnmøre, and he wanted to create a language that could educate the Norwegian people. That because we were learning Danish in schools, and that's I don't want to talk about all this, because there's so many other channels that talk about that. But I just want to say that he tried to make a language that we don't have to be dumber than the elite that was talking Danish, you know. So he made first he made a language. First he learned his students form the dialect of Sunnmøre, called Sunnmørsgrammatikken. Was a book of that he made. But later on, he was making a language that was like the big inspiration for nynorsk, and that was the landsmål. It was a collecting of a lot of the dialects in Norway, but mostly in Western Norway, and that's because nynorsk is so dominant in Western Norway, because Western Norwegian dialects, especially in the regions of Hardanger and Sogn, is the most preserved dialects of Norwegian. It was most with the most oldest words, and the language with the oldest dialects come from Hardanger and Sogn, the two regions in Western Norway, and they were so preserved that they had and still have. Of course, those dialects still exist. They have a very very high influence on Old Norwegian. They have a nynorsk. The Hardanger and Sogn dialects that was the two parts of Norway that Ivar Aasen focused heaviest on, like to have the biggest focus on, and made the most of nynorsk of. And that's why it's when you talk, read nynorsk, it sounds like you're coming from Voss, coming from Hardanger or Sogn regions, yeah. So and because and that were and because of those two oldest lands, because the reason why and because Hardanger and Sogn dialects was much more preserved, have much more Old Norse and Old Norwegian in their dialects. In Sogn and Hardanger had much more Old Norwegian and much more of the tone melody of Old Norse and Faroese and Icelandic today. So nynorsk, people from Sogn and Hardanger is talking a dialect that is very, very closely related to Faroese especially. But in Sogn is almost, some dialects is actually more related to Icelandic. It's had a lot of diphthongs and all that. So it's many people from Iceland always very often misunderstand people from Sogn to be Icelanders themselves. So it's so Sogn dialect, the Sogn dialect and the Hardanger dialect is so close to Faroese and Icelandic more than the other Norwegian dialects, much more than the other, much more. When I say much more, it's much more related to Icelandic and Faroese, is much more. And I'm talking to sometimes I'm talking to Faroese people, and I sometimes I think, wow, you sound like you are from Sogn sometimes, because you have the same words as some people. It's very so the Sogn dialect and Hardanger dialect and Faroese language and the Icelandic language almost the same language. They are almost Sogn is talking so closely to Icelandic and Faroese, and the same do Hardanger is so closely to Icelandic and Faroese, those two languages. And also the other thing, and therefore Ivar Aasen wanted to want to focus on those dialects, because he want to take the old Norwegian writing language back again, because it exists a Norwegian language before that was not Old Norse, that was after the Old Norse, that was differentiated of Icelandic, Old Icelandic, Old Swedish and Old Danish and Old Faroese. It was a unique language for Norway, and that is Sogn and Hardanger is very closely related to, and therefore is nynorsk so very popular in Western Norway. And also, the thing is, here comes the confusing stuff. Back, because nynorsk were invented by or landsmål that would change name to nynorsk, but it wasn't the same language as nynorsk. So I would differentiate. But the precursor of nynorsk and bokmål, as we know it today, was changed at the same time. But the precursor of nynorsk and precursor of bokmål was nynorsk was the precursor of nynorsk was invented in the 1850s, but the precursor of bokmål was created in the 18th century. Yeah, so bokmål is newer than nynorsk. Uh, um, Bokmål, nynorsk is the older writing language, or a Norwegian writing language. So when you talk about that bokmål is the right language for Norway, you also say that nynorsk should sound like Danish. Nynorsk. You also say that you don't like the Norwegian language because the Norwegian language is nynorsk. It's not bokmål. Bokmål is another form for Danish, and you can't misunderstand that, because nynorsk is the more purish, more purish and more straightforward, just Norwegian. But bokmål is more Danish influenced. So what you want to have, nynorsk that is more closer to the old Norwegian that we spoke in the Middle Ages, just in Norway, not another country in the world or in Scandinavia, and or the Nordic countries for that matter. But so when you choose bokmål instead of nynorsk, you have to think of the thing that bokmål is. You say actually that the Danish language is much prettier than the Norwegian one, and I like Danish as a language. Don't misunderstand me there, but I want to have a Norwegian language of the country of Norway. I want to have a real Norwegian language. And I also think that it's very important, because when you take away a language, or even if you take nynorsk or bokmål away, if you take one of them away, it's even how much even how big the language is, or how or small, you will always would come up with big serious consequences for what either bokmål or nynorsk people. And in this case, in this video, I will talk about the nynorsk ones, because it's extremely big issue that the nynorsk dialects is so people in Norway is especially the bokmål people is always, and also people who learns Norwegian just learns bokmål, and very often people's especially immigrants and people from left very right wing people in Norway, and people that are really bokmål users that actually are not so very open or very open-minded to nynorsk, or to have like a variety of languages. But when you take away nynorsk, you have to take in your mind that many Norwegians think that they have to take away nynorsk because it's too difficult to have. It's too old-fashioned and extremely is the society goes very slow because of that. So I would say to you that Norwegians that and people that are not open to nynorsk, not open-minded to nynorsk, I would say, shut your mouth, because when you take away nynorsk, you have to think of all those people that lose their education because they can't translate themselves over to bokmål, because they are not so very used to bokmål than the bokmål users. So you're making a huge gap in the society, that all the bokmål that learn bokmål gets higher power than nynorsk, and you also you are stamping on the people that are for that the language should that people should have the choice to have nynorsk as a choice, to have a choice to be in purity Norwegian or purity or you want to have a little more easily form of it. But yeah, either way, you have to understand how much lives you are damaging, or for that reason destroying, for taking a whole language away from your official language list of your country, because it's so damaging. It's you are stamping on other people's freedom of speech and meanings. Say, I want to write this language because that's my heart. You are stamping on others' heart roots. It's the most rudest things. It would have major consequences, a lot of protests. So if you do that, you have to be aware of all those consequences you're gonna have. Thank you.